I was 25, running on cold brew and curiosity, when the lights went out. Not the office lights they stay on even when Chicago goes blue in winter, but the servers. The heartbeat monitors flatlined all at once, a red horizon across my screens at 4:13 p.m. on a Friday. My name is Hazel Reed, IT specialist at VantageLoop, a data integration startup on the 10th floor of a glass box overlooking the river. I wore noise-canceling headphones and a hoodie with a coffee stain shaped like Michigan. I liked logs more than people. And I loved my job. Until 4:13 p.m. Hazel, you seeing this? Liam leaned over the divider, eyes wide at the pager alert tsunami. Kube nodes are dropping like everything. I'm on it, I said. Too fast. Already SSHing into bastions, fingers moving on muscle memory. Grafana cranked up to 11. Health checks failing. Read replicas desynced. Our primary cluster looked like someone had pulled the fire alarm inside a data center, and all the sprinklers went off at once. Team Bridge, now, said a new box on my screen, Slack from my manager, Mark Ellison. Calm, period at the end of the sentence, like he'd practiced crisis management in a mirror. I joined the call and felt that familiar hush, the kind that wraps around bad news. Hazel, Mark said, voice smooth as a presentation clicker. What changed in the last hour? I skimmed the deploy logs. Nothing in prod, staging only. We didn't push. Okay, he said. Then how did our primary registry get wiped? I blinked. It didn't. Check again. I checked again. My breath stalled. The container registry had purged tags older than 7 days. Dozens of services were trying to roll back and finding nothing but ghosts. That's not possible, I whispered. Purge is locked to admin. Mark's sigh slid through my headset. So who escalated privileges? I scrolled like my life depended on it. Audit logs, IM roles. I felt the shape of a panic I didn't want to admit. Hazel, he said, harder now. We need answers. I swallowed. My stomach went cold. I don't know yet. Of course you don't, he muttered, not quite off mic. The call swelled with voices. Product screaming about SLAs. Sales worried about the demo on Monday. Liam drowning in restart scripts. And me. Trying to isolate a cause in the noise, searching for a heartbeat that didn't exist. Then Mark spoke for the room. We're declaring a Sev 1. Hazel, what exactly did you touch today? It landed like an accusation. I started. He cut in, crisp. Have you been testing the purge tool in prod? My cheeks heated. No, never. I've literally never. Because I have a screenshot, he said. And I'm sending it to the exec channel now. The world tilted. A screenshot hit Slack like a grenade. My username. A command line. A purge flag. I stared, and the command stared back. It was the right prompt color, my alias, my host name. It looked like something I would run if I had a death wish. That's not mine, I said, but the certainty in my voice broke on the last word. Mark's tone turned almost paternal. We all make mistakes, but we need you to own this so we can fix it. My heart hammered. I didn't run that. Then who did? He asked, softening in a way that made me feel small. You're the only one with that automation key, Hazel. I looked at the clock. 4:23 p.m. 10 minutes, since the world fell apart. In those 10 minutes, my career shrank to a rumor. We stayed until midnight. We rebuilt what we could. We rerouted traffic, restored snapshots, stitched together a wobbling version of normal. But the damage was already a headline inside our company. When I finally stepped into the elevator, the mirror threw back a face I barely recognized. Ponytail coming loose, eyes like burnt coffee, fingers smudged with Sharpie notes. I didn't sleep. I could still hear Mark's last sentence before he left the war room, hand on my chair like a verdict. We'll have to talk to HR first thing, about expectations. Expectations. I walked home along the river, wind knifing under my coat, and felt my life narrow to a pinhole. I thought about how I got here. The kid who took apart school computers for fun, the intern who fixed a production outage on her second day, the woman who trusted logs more than promises. By morning, my Slack access was temporarily limited. My calendar invited me to a crisis review, mandatory. Mandatory felt like a trap, Liam texted. You okay? I typed, deleted, typed again. Fine. Did you see that screenshot? He replied after a pause. Yeah. It sucked. I stared at the three dots that didn't return. At 9:07 a.m., HR slid into my inbox with a meeting link to discuss the incident and next steps. Mark was CC'd. So was Anika, our VP of engineering. I put on a blazer over my hoodie, like armor, and walked back into the building. The lobby smelled like oranges from a diffuser someone thought made the place friendlier. The receptionist looked at me too long. 10 floors up, heads turned the way people look at a car with a dent. Curious, relieved it isn't theirs. Mark was already in the glass conference room, sleeves rolled, posture perfect. He smiled like a dentist. He didn't wait for me to sit. Before we begin, we'll need your laptop for forensic review, he said. My hands went cold around the aluminum. You'll have it after the meeting. His smile cooled. Company policy is immediate surrender. I breathed in through my nose. Policy also says I get a representative present if this could lead to disciplinary action. Anika appeared, efficient as a stopwatch. We're not here to punish Hazel, she said. We're here to learn. I almost laughed. We recorded the meeting like a true crime podcast. HR introduced themselves. Anika set the agenda. Mark moved through a slide deck he'd definitely made at 2 a.m., titled Root Cause and Mitigations. Slide 3 was the screenshot. This is Hazel's terminal, Mark said, voice even. At 1611, a purge flag was executed against our container registry. We believe this caused the cascading failures. I could feel my pulse in my throat. That's not my terminal, I said, words clipped to keep them from shaking. The prompt color is wrong. I use green for root sessions, not red, and I don't write my host names like that. Mark tilted his head. Interesting. Then why does it match your alias? Because aliases can be copied. Anika interlaced her fingers. Do you have any evidence to support that this wasn't you, Hazel? I thought of the thing I do every night, like prayer. I back up my logs, not because I don't trust people, because I trust entropy. May I share my screen? I asked. HR glanced at Mark. He hesitated, then nodded. I connected. I navigated to an encrypted drive under my user folder, named something boring on purpose. Notes, 2019. Inside, a vault of compressed logs, dated and time-stamped, because I am my father's daughter, and he taught me to write everything down. I opened the folder for yesterday. Audit logs per service. IAM access logs. CLI session histories. The kind of library that makes or breaks a story. Mark shifted in his chair. Those are personal backups. Only of my own sessions and publicly available audit streams, I said, calm as I could make it. Nothing proprietary beyond what I need to do my job. Anika raised a hand. Let her show. I pulled up the access log for our admin key rotation. My fingers moved without noise, without extra flourishes, like the motion itself might anchor me. Line after line of normal. Then a block that didn't belong. At 1558, an admin token was used from an IP address inside the office, but not from my machine. The user agent string wasn't mine either. The command was wrapped in a script I didn't write, a time-stamped task with a nonsensical name. Weekly, cleanup, Shay. I zoomed in. The task had been scheduled for 1611. The exact minute our registry bled out. Where did that come from? Anika asked, leaning forward. I felt something in me shift. The ground rebalancing under my feet. It came from a machine named MLELLISONMBP, I said, the words slow, each one tasting like iron. Silence pressed against the glass walls. Mark breathed a short, startled laugh. That's my old laptop name. Before IT standardized them. This must be spoofed. I scrolled to the MAC address. I pulled our asset management feed. I didn't have to be a detective. The numbers lined up like a confession. It's your current machine, I said, voice small but steady. The script was created at 14:06, under your admin role. Something flashed across his face. Not guilt. A calculation. He shook his head, jaw tight. I've been in meetings all day. Hazel, you're reaching. This is classic deflection. You've clearly been experimenting with purge flags. I haven't, I said, and heard myself differently this time. Firm. Uncompromising. Liam's avatar pinged in the corner. I ignored it. HR cleared her throat. We need to pause here and let IT security analyze. No, Mark said quickly. We should proceed. There's a lot of context Hazel doesn't have. Like the context where I apparently typed on your laptop from across the room, I asked. Stop, Anika said, voice cool steel. We're not theatrics, we're facts. I nodded, exhale shaking out of me. I have more. I opened the meeting notes from yesterday afternoon. A calendar invite at 2 p.m. for a finance sync that Mark forgot to set to private. On the guest list, our CFO, our CEO, and Mark. I clicked the chat attached to that event. There it was. Mark complaining about runaway infra costs and someone needs to be made accountable. He hadn't planned a purge. He'd planned a scapegoat. The room temperature changed. It wasn't warmer, just less cold. Mark leaned back. You're violating confidentiality by opening private meetings. It's visible to me because you forgot to remove me from the calendar rule, I said. I handle the AV for boardrooms on Mondays. He knew that. He'd forgotten I'm in the walls. Anika looked between us, eyes sharpening. Hazel, can you package these logs for security? I already did, I said. Last night, in an encrypted bundle. Why? Because on the walk home, with wind slapping at my face, I made a decision. Fear could make me small. Or it could make me precise. I chose precise. Mark's smile didn't come back. This is outrageous, he said, but the edges of his words were dull. Let's take a break, HR suggested, voice careful, as if touching live wire. We stood. I gathered my laptop like it was a lifeline. In the glass reflection, I saw myself again, tired, but taller. Liam was by the coffee machine when I stepped out. He avoided my eyes, then didn't. Hey, she danced a wren. Since God helps here, she had the denticated and find her a pay. He swallowed. He asked me for your alias last week, he said softly. Said he was auditing. I didn't think. It's okay, I said. And it wasn't, but it would be. Thanks for telling me. He nodded. You got this. I went back to the conference room with a small, hard thing forming in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. A seed of something else. Clarity. Because this wasn't just about me and a screenshot. It was about a man who thought he could draft a story and make me the villain. As if my life were a slide deck he could rearrange. When we sat down again, HR's tone had a different gravity. We'll reconvene with IT security in 20 minutes, she said. Hazel, you may be asked to present your evidence to the executive team. Mark's jaw tightened. Is that necessary? Anika didn't look at him. I closed my eyes for a second and saw lines of text like constellations. I remembered my dad teaching me to take photos of car dashboards before we left a rental lot. Always keep records, Hayes, he'd say, handing me a beat-up point and shoot. Adults forget. Paper remembers. Paper remembers. Okay, I said. I'm ready. My laptop chimed with a new invite. Emergency all-hands review, 10:30 a.m. The guest list was a who's who of our leadership. And me. My heart did that weird hummingbird thing again. Mark stood to refill his water. He leaned toward me, voice low, friendly poison. You don't want to do this, he murmured. Trust me. These rooms, they eat people like you. I looked up at him and saw it clearly. He was afraid. Then I'll bring something they can't swallow, I said. He blinked. At 10:28, we filed into the boardroom. The city glittered behind glass, cold and bright. People settled like birds before a storm. Laptops opened. Cameras tested. Someone adjusted the mic. Anika nodded at me across the table. You're first, she said. Show us what happened. I plugged in the HDMI. The screen went black. Then, blue. Then, the conference room was a fishbowl glass walls, quiet spectators, and the scent of fear masked by peppermint from the air freshener. At the head of the table sat Anika, our VP of engineering. To her right, the CFO, the head of HR, and the CTO, faces I'd only seen in company newsletters. On the far end, Mark Ellison, my manager, the man who tried to burn my career to keep his from collapsing. It was 10:30 a.m. The emergency all-hands review had begun, and I was about to either clear my name or end up the villain in a story no one would question. Hazel, you have the floor, Anika said, voice calm but heavy with expectation. I took a breath that felt too big for my lungs. Thank you. The screen behind me glowed to life, a dark terminal window filled with time-stamped text. I pointed to the first entry. This is the access log from yesterday, captured automatically by my workstation. It records every system command I run, every session ID, and the associated IP. I tapped the trackpad. Here's the window between 3:50 and 4:30 p.m. when our outage began. Lines scrolled by, commands, timestamps, nothing suspicious. Then, highlighted in red, the foreign entry. 1558. Admin token. Generated by user, Mellison. 1611. Script executed. Weekly. Cleanup. I turned back to the room. This script didn't come from my terminal. It came from Mark's machine. The device name, MAC address, and geolocation match his assigned company laptop. Mark's jaw flexed. That's circumstantial, Hazel. Anyone could spoof a hostname. Not the physical network interface ID, I said. Unless someone cloned your machine's MAC address and accessed it from your office Wi-Fi session, you'd have to be sitting right there to trigger it. Silence. The CTO, a woman named Priya, leaned forward. Are you suggesting Mark intentionally caused the outage? I hesitated. I'm saying the evidence shows the command originated from his laptop. Mark gave a sharp laugh, like he was trying to shake off tension. Hazel, come on. You think I'd sabotage my own infrastructure? For what? This not expurses never. For the finance meeting you had 2 hours before the crash, I said softly. A few heads turned. I continued. You told the CFO and CEO that infrastructure costs were out of control. You promised to streamline DevOps and reduce overhead. If production collapsed conveniently close to that conversation, well, that would make it easier to blame the budget or someone under you. Mark's face drained of color, but he recovered fast. That's ridiculous. You're reading intent into coincidence. Then let's check Slack, I said. I opened another window. Here's your message to me last week. Send me your alias. I'm cleaning old cron jobs. You didn't tell me why. That's the alias tied to the script name, Weekly. Cleanup. SH. I paused. Let the connection sink in. You used my alias to execute a destructive command, then took a screenshot to frame me. Someone exhaled. Someone else muttered, Jesus. The CFO turned to Mark. Is this true? He smiled tight, cornered. It's a clever story, but she's misreading logs. Anyone with basic admin access could. Except no one else had it, Priya interrupted. You're the only one who didn't rotate credentials last quarter. The air thickened. Anika nodded at security, who had joined silently at the back. Can we verify Hazel's claims? One of them, a bald man with a tablet, spoke up. We've already cross-checked the network activity. The script ran from Mark's laptop at 4:11 p.m. Hazel's device was idle at that exact second. She's telling the truth. Mark went still. No blinking. No smirk. Just the quiet horror of a man realizing his plan had leaked. When the meeting ended, HR escorted him out. No shouting, no drama, just the soft click of the glass door sealing behind him. The room exhaled. Anika turned to me. Hazel, what you did here. The preparation, the evidence, it saved us weeks of chaos. I can't thank you enough. I nodded numbly. My hands were shaking under the table. I just wanted to set the record straight. She studied me for a long moment. Take the day off. Go home. Get some air. I smiled faintly. Thanks. As I walked back to my desk, the office felt different. People looked at me like I was radioactive, half awe, half fear. I could still hear their whispers. Did she really prove it? Mark's toast. She must have planned that whole thing. Maybe I had. Maybe part of me did plan it. Unconsciously. I'd been collecting logs for years, not for revenge, but for control. And now, that habit had become my shield. When I packed my laptop, Liam appeared beside me, his voice low. Hey, you okay? I looked up at him, trying to smile. Yeah, just tired. He hesitated. You really nailed him in there. I didn't think you'd actually pull it off. Neither did I said. He scratched the back of his neck. They're gonna promote you for this, you know? I zipped my backpack. I don't want a promotion. I just want peace. But peace, I'd soon realize, doesn't come after truth. It comes after consequences. I left the building around noon. The sky was brittle blue, the kind that looks beautiful, but burns your lungs when you breathe. I walked along the river again, same as last night, only this time, my chest didn't feel heavy, it felt empty. I stopped at a bench, sat, and pulled out my phone. Messages were piling up: LinkedIn recruiters, coworkers, even old college classmates who somehow heard. Then, one new message. Unknown number. Nice work, Hazel. You're smarter than I thought. But don't think this is over. My stomach dropped. The number traced back to a prepaid phone. No name, no record. But I didn't need one to know who it was. Mark. I stared at the screen, pulse spiking. The rational part of me said, he's bluffing. The other part, the part that had been blamed, humiliated, nearly fired, said, he's not done, because men like Mark don't lose quietly. And I wasn't about to either. I looked at the river, shimmering under the noon sun, and felt something coil inside me. Not fear this time. Not shock. Purpose. He wanted a game? Fine. I'd play, but I'd win. Because I still had the logs. And the logs never lie. That night, I started building a folder on my home computer. I called it Project Phoenix. Inside it, I began documenting everything: emails, Slack messages, financial files Mark had sent around, small irregularities I'd ignored before. The more I dug, the more I realized the crash wasn't the only manipulation. There were budget falsifications, system reports he'd edited before presenting them, even performance reviews he'd rewritten to downplay his team. He'd been building his empire on lies, and now, brick by brick, I was dismantling it. But before I could finish, I found something buried deep in the archives. A transaction record, dated 6 months ago, $25,000 paid to a private consultant through a dummy vendor account Mark created. The description: Data Purge Automation Pilot. Automation. Purge. He hadn't framed me for an accident. He'd tested a weapon, and the proof was sitting on my screen. That's when I knew. His firing wasn't enough. He didn't just deserve justice, he deserved exposure, and I was going to give it to him. Even if it meant burning down what was left of my own career to do it. Because the truth wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about revenge. And I'd only just started. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was slashing through my blinds, like interrogation lights. I hadn't slept more than 2 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that payment record: $25,000 to a fake vendor, Data Purge Automation Pilot. Mark hadn't made a mistake. He'd built a system one designed to destroy data and hide who pulled the trigger. And somehow, he'd tested it under our noses. I sat at my desk, coffee going cold beside me, and opened my laptop. The folder, Project Phoenix, stared back at me, my secret vault. Inside, chat logs, audit trails, altered expense reports, and now, that payment record. If I handed all this to Vantage Loop's legal team, they'd bury Mark forever. But they'd probably bury me too for holding sensitive data outside company servers. So I had to be careful. No. Strategic. I opened a new note. Objective: expose Mark without compromising myself. Method: trace the fake vendor, find the money trail, and let the evidence speak for itself. I cracked my knuckles and got to work. Step 1. Find the vendor. The invoice listed a company called Infrasphere Consulting. The address led to a shared workspace downtown. I cross-checked it against the Illinois Business Registry. No active license. But there was an email domain at infrasphere.io, registered under Yep M. Ellison. Jesus, I whispered. You didn't even try to hide it. Except, there was something else. The domain wasn't brand new. It had existed for 2 years, which meant he'd been planning this long before the crash. At 9 a.m., my phone buzzed. A Slack notification. Anika. Hey Hazel. Can you hop on a quick call? My stomach clenched. I didn't want to sound paranoid, but paranoia had saved me once already. Sure, I typed back. 2 minutes later, I was on Zoom. Anika looked tired. Hair pinned back. Coffee in hand. Morning, she said. I wanted to check in after yesterday. You doing okay? I nodded. Yeah, just processing. That's fair. She hesitated, then added, I wanted you to know we're launching a full internal audit. Security is digging through months of access logs, emails, everything. If you have anything relevant, it might help. My throat went dry. Anything relevant, she said, like my hidden stash of files. If I gave them up, they'd see how deep I'd gone, how much I'd already accessed without permission. I forced a calm tone. I'll see what I can find. Thanks, Hazel. She smiled faintly. You did good work. You should be proud. Pride wasn't what I felt. It was hunger. Because for the first time, I realized the company wasn't the enemy. Mark was. And he wasn't done. That night, my apartment felt too quiet. The hum of my fridge, the ticking clock, the faint buzz of the city outside all felt amplified. I poured myself another coffee, even though it was midnight, pulled up my terminal, and started digging again. The payment from Mark's fake vendor had gone to a small bank in Indiana, an account that was later emptied into crypto wallets. The blockchain trail led through a privacy mixer, but one transaction stood out. A deposit to a wallet labeled 0x Ellison, test. I actually laughed out loud. Oh, come on, Mark. He'd literally named the test wallet after himself. But the timestamp was the real kicker. June 14, 2024. 2 weeks before the company had quietly announced budget cuts. That meant the purge tool had been in play even before the layoffs, possibly used to manipulate numbers, wipe logs, erase overspending, and make Mark look like a hero who saved the company money. My hands trembled over the keyboard. This wasn't just sabotage, it was fraud. And if I could prove it, I could do more than clear my name. I could end his career. I opened Signal and messaged Liam. Me. You still have the finance API logs from last quarter? Liam. Yeah, why? Me. Need to check something. Discrepancies, maybe. Liam. Hazel. You're not digging into this again, are you? He's gone. Me. He's not gone. He's hiding. No reply for a while. Then finally, Liam. Fine. Check your inbox. He sent me a compressed archive. Inside, transaction logs from the same window as the fake vendor payment. And buried deep in the JSON records, one strange line. User, id, Mellison admin vertical bar action. Delete vertical bar dataset. Cost. Reports. Vertical bar reason. Sync error. A sync error. That's what he'd called it when he manually erased cost data. That's how he'd hidden the missing $25 kelvins. I stared at the line for a long time, my mind racing. If I leaked this, I could destroy him publicly. But if I leaked it wrong, I'd get sued into oblivion. So I needed someone who knew how to handle this. Someone outside the company. At 2 a.m., I reached out to an old college friend, Ray Park, now an investigative journalist at a tech ethics blog called The Circuit. I sent a message. Hey Ray, got something big. Fraud, data manipulation, corporate cover-up. You free to talk? She replied 5 minutes later. Hazel Reed? Damn, it's been years. You okay? Barely. But I have proof. Logs, payments, everything. It's tied to my old manager. If it's what I think it is, we should meet. In person. When? Tomorrow, 8 a.m. Cafe Nova, Wacker Drive. I stared at the screen. I hadn't seen Ray in 4 years, but she'd always been fearless, the kind of person who'd walk into a lawsuit with a smile if the story was worth it. Maybe that's why I trusted her. The next morning, the city was gray and tense. The kind of Chicago morning where the river looks like steel. Cafe Nova was crowded, full of caffeine and startup chatter. I spotted Ray, instantly, short hair, bomber jacket, laptop covered in stickers that said, "Encrypt everything," and "No gods, no algorithms." She waved. "Hazel freaking Reed. Girl, you look like you've been through war." "I have," I said, sliding into the booth. "And I think it's not over." She raised an eyebrow. "You said fraud?" I pulled out my USB stick, the encrypted one. "Everything's in here: audit logs, payment records, proof that my manager set me up and that he used company funds for a secret automation project." Ray whistled low. "Damn. You realize this could blow up, right? Like, federal blow up." "Yeah," I said quietly. "That's why I came to you." She leaned forward. "You want to stay anonymous?" I hesitated. "No. I want the truth out there. But I don't want to die on this hill alone." She smiled faintly. "Then you won't." We talked for an hour. Ray promised to verify every document, trace the fake vendor, confirm the bank transfer. She'd reach out to legal contacts for whistleblower protection if it came to that. By the time I left, I felt lighter. Like I'd finally turned the weapon around. But the relief didn't last long. When I got home, my laptop camera light was on. Just a faint green dot staring at me. I froze, then slammed the lid shut. Heart pounding, I disconnected my Wi-Fi and yanked out the Ethernet cable. Then I sat there in the quiet, breathing hard. Someone had hacked me. I'd thought I was the hunter. But Mark? He'd just found me. The green light burned in the dark like a staring eye. I didn't move for a full 30 seconds. My breath came shallow, fast. Then, instinct took over. I slammed my laptop shut, grabbed a screwdriver, and popped the battery out. The room went quiet again, too quiet. I wasn't imagining it. Someone had gotten in. Mark. He must have still had access to something: an admin account, a credential, maybe even a backdoor from the tool he built. I'd underestimated him. That realization hit harder than the fear. Because if he'd been watching me, he might have seen everything: the logs, the payment record, Ray. I picked up my phone to call her but stopped. What if he was tracking that too? I put it down. I grabbed my old ThinkPad from the closet, the one I hadn't used since college. Air-gapped. No wireless card. No Bluetooth. It was a tank. Ugly. Heavy. But safe. I booted into a fresh Linux install from a thumb drive. Then I pulled my encrypted backup from my USB stick and checked the logs. There it was. A remote session, 3:17 p.m. Origin: unknown IP. Access point: Vantage Loop VPN gateway. My heart sank. That meant someone inside the company, someone still employed, had given Mark access again. Or worse, he'd never lost it. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the apartment made me flinch. Pipes, footsteps upstairs, even the hum of the fridge felt like surveillance. At 5:30 a.m., I packed a bag. Laptop, drive, notebook. I needed air, distance, anonymity. Cafe Nova opened at 6. Ray was already there when I arrived, hood up, typing fast. She looked up as I slid into the booth. "Hazel, you okay? You look like hell." "I think he hacked me." Her fingers froze. "Wait, Mark?" "Yeah." My camera turned on by itself. There was a remote session from a company VPN. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. "Did you disconnect?" "I killed the machine. I'm on a clean system now." Ray's expression hardened. "Okay, listen. I started digging last night. You were right about the fake vendor. Infrasphere Consulting doesn't exist, but the EIN number? It was used to register another company, Loop Shield Analytics, 3 weeks ago. Guess who signed it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. "Mark," she said. "And get this. Loop Shield just signed a security subcontract with Vantage Loop's parent company. He's already setting himself up somewhere else. My stomach twisted. He's laundering his way back into the system. Ray nodded grimly. He's trying to get ahead of the story. Probably spinning himself as the guy who found vulnerabilities in the old infrastructure. Classic redemption play. I gritted my teeth. She studied me for a long moment. You sure you want to go nuclear? I nodded. He tried to erase me. Now, I'll erase him with facts. We spent the next 2 hours creating what Ray called a truth package. Every log, every screenshot, every trace of his fake vendor and payments. She formatted it into a single investigative brief, complete with verifiable data points and timelines. If we release this, she said, it's going to detonate. But before we publish, I want confirmation from a source inside Vantage Loop. Someone who can verify that payment from the company side. I thought about it. There was one person, Liam. By the time I found him, he was sitting in the break room at Vantage Loop, headphones on, pretending to be busy. His eyes flicked up when he saw me. Hazel, hey, I didn't think you'd come back. I'm not here officially. He looked nervous. Should you even be here? I just need a favor. Then I'm gone. He glanced around. What kind of favor? I sat down across from him. I need proof that Mark authorized a payment to a vendor named Infrasphere Consulting. You have access to the finance API, right? He exhaled. Hazel, you're playing with fire. So is he. Liam hesitated, then leaned closer. You didn't hear this from me, but after he got fired, someone higher up requested we revalidate all external payments. One of them, Infrasphere, was marked as cleared by exec override. Exec override? I repeated. He nodded. Meaning someone in upper management approved it after the fact. That changed everything. Who? He lowered his voice. The CFO. My brain clicked through every connection at once. Mark's meeting with the CFO, the budget cuts, the missing data. He wasn't acting alone. I left the office shaking. The cold wind outside felt like clarity. This wasn't one man's revenge. It was a partnership. Mark caused the chaos. The CFO covered it up. Ray needed to hear this. I texted her. New angle, it's bigger. CFO involved. Meet tonight? She replied instantly. Yes. My place, 8 p.m. Bring everything. At 7:58, I stood outside her apartment, 3rd floor, South Loop, lights on. The building smelled like old brick and coffee grounds. She opened the door in sweats, her laptop open on the kitchen island. You're right, she said before I even spoke. The CFO's name shows up on the override authorization. I just traced the signature file through the vendor portal. My pulse spiked. So they both knew. Yeah, Ray grinned, that fierce journalist glint in her eye. We've got them dead to rights. I let out a shaky breath. Then let's finish it. She plugged in my USB stick, copying the final pieces of evidence to her encrypted drive. Once this uploads, I'll send it to my editor. We'll go live tomorrow morning. Finally, I thought. It's over. Then, her laptop screen glitched. Just for a second, static. Then, black. What the? Ray started. The cursor began moving on its own. Windows closing, files deleting one by one. Oh my God, she whispered. He's in my system. Pull the plug, I shouted. She yanked the power cord, but it was too late. The drive ejected itself with a click. The file transfer progress bar vanished. The folder, Project Phoenix, zip was gone. Completely wiped. Ray's face went pale. Hazel, how did he? I was already digging through my bag. I'd made backups. Multiple. But my drive light wasn't blinking either. I plugged it into my ThinkPad. Nothing. Corrupted. He'd nuked everything. Ray ran a hand through her hair, panic in her voice. He's got remote persistence somewhere, root-level access. I stared at the blank screen, pulse hammering. Mark wasn't just covering his tracks. He was erasing us. Hazel, Ray said quietly, do you have any copy left? I swallowed hard. One. Offline. Printed. Her eyes widened. Printed? Yeah. In my apartment. She grabbed her coat. Then let's move. We bolted for the stairs. I didn't even bother locking the door. Outside, the night had that electric hum before a storm. Halfway down the block, my phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number, again. You should have left it alone, Hazel. I told you logs can be rewritten. I stopped cold. Ray turned to me. What is it? I showed her the screen. Her jaw tightened. Then it's time to prove they can't. We ran into the night, chasing the only evidence left between justice and total erasure. The stairwell smelled like mildew and old coffee. Ray and I moved like burglars because, in a way, we were. We had one printed copy of Project Phoenix and a single plan. Get it to 3 separate, trusted places before Mark could delete the rest of our evidence. My apartment building felt different this time. The hallway lights flickered, the mailboxes clanged like someone rattling a loose tooth. I kept expecting to see Mark's face at the top of the steps. The door to my unit was ajar. My breath hitched. Stay here, I told Ray, even though I knew she wasn't going anywhere. Her face was a hard line, eyes scanning the corridor like a hawk. I pushed the door the rest of the way open and stepped inside. Everything looked normal at first. Couch in place, bookshelf crooked, a mug in the sink. Then I saw the kitchen counter papers scattered, drawers open. Someone had been here. I felt cold in a way the Chicago wind had never managed. I checked the bedroom, the closet, the bathroom. No one. No prints. No footprints in the thin dust. And my printer gone. Someone had taken the printer and every physical copy I'd made earlier. Whoever broke in had been thorough enough to cause panic, but not thorough enough to find the one copy I'd hidden in plain sight. I exhaled like I was letting air out of a balloon. In the cookbook, Ray said quietly. I blinked. My secret stash had been the old community cookbook on my shelf. I'd hollowed out a section months ago when I first started Project Phoenix, because who would suspect a battered Midwest home cooking? I pulled it out. The spine was taped. My fingers trembled as I fished into the hollow. The printed packet was there, intact, wrapped in wax paper, smell of printer toner, and stale coffee. Thank God, Ray whispered. She moved fast, slipping on her knit gloves as if preparing for surgery. We need to move. Now. We split up the plan into tiny actions. 1. Get an encrypted photograph of the packet time-stamped at a public place. Send a certified copy to a federal whistleblower inbox, the SEC's anonymous portal Ray knew how to reach. 3. Drop a copy with a trusted legal advocate who would notarize it and physically store it in a law office safe. And 4. Get a backup to a personal friend's out-of-state P.O. box. Ray drove. I rode shotgun, clutching the cookbook like an artifact. We hit the first checkpoint at a municipal library downtown. The librarian looked at us like we were strange when we asked to use the scanner, but didn't ask questions. We digitized the packet, stamped it with the library's time, and uploaded the file to 3 encrypted cloud accounts Ray trusted. That timestamp would be our proof if the company tried to claim we fabricated anything later. Next stop, a law firm Ray had worked with before. The lawyer, a quiet woman named Monica, listened to us and barely blinked. She took the packet, rifled through it like she was reading the terms of a contract. Then, she nodded once. Leave this with me, she said. I'll log it, notarize it, and keep it in our safe deposit. If anything goes sideways, we'll have a physical, dated anchor. One by one, we secured the anchors. The SEC submission was filed with encrypted attachments. Ray sent a verified encrypted message to her editor with the package link and a time delay embargo set to lift if anything happened to either of us. When the 4th checkpoint was done, Liam's sister's P.O. box in Indiana, of all places, I finally allowed myself to relax a thread. That's when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Impressive, but you can't stop what's already in motion. I felt a hollowing in my chest. The scope of Mark's reach had always been unknown. Now it was personal. He was taunting us. Ray held my hand like a lifeline. They'll be careful now, she said. But the words sounded like something someone tells themselves at 3 a.m. to keep sleep from fleeing. We went back to my apartment to regroup. The building looked the same, a beige shell in a row of beige shells. I kept checking the window like a hawk. Someone could be watching. We went through our contingency list. What else could go wrong? We listed 12 things and crossed off every one we could preempt. Legal safe houses, public timestamps, journalist protection. We even considered disappearing for a few days and letting the story air cold. Ray was tired, but her eyes still blazed. "You know what's weird?" she said, half a joke. Mark kept his wallet under his keyboard. People who hide stuff in obvious places are either lazy or brilliant. Or both, I said. We decided one last move. Go to the company boardroom and watch the executives' faces when the SEC inquiry notice hit their inboxes. It was cruel, maybe self-sabotaging. But I wanted to see the people who'd let Mark run for years squirm when the evidence landed. We didn't make it. As we approached the lobby, my phone chimed again. Unknown number. "We're done here, Hazel. Walk away." The elevator doors opened, and Mark was stepping out. He looked tired in a new way. Not the nervy, calculating strain he'd worn earlier, but hollowed out, small, like smoke. He didn't move fast. He didn't need to. He just stood there and let us see him. "Hazel," he said, voice soft. "You should have taken the deal. You could have kept your job, your life. You lied. You destroyed people's work," I said. "You didn't just hurt me," he smiled, the old mask slipping back. "They asked me to fix the bleeding. I fixed it." "You call framing me fixing?" Ray snapped. He shrugged. "Sometimes you have to make a choice." A security guard appeared out of nowhere. He was young, inexperienced, face all angles. His walkie chirped. "Sir, you're not—" Mark waved him off. "I'll go," he said, "for now." As he walked past, his shoulder brushed mine. A piece of paper fell from his jacket. I stooped, heart thudding. It was a receipt. A signed check stub for payment to Loop Shield Analytics. Dated last week. He had been moving money again. After he'd been fired. I felt something shift. A dangerous, irrevocable angle in the world. Ray snatched a photo with her phone, hands shaking. Mark smiled to himself like he'd just completed a chess move. Then he turned toward us and said, calm and final, "Publish it. But understand this, when the house burns, everyone gets ash. Including you." He walked away. The lobby felt suddenly smaller. The security guard didn't know what to do. Ray slipped her hand into mine. "We need to hit send," she said. "Now." I nodded. We sent the SEC package. Ray hit publish on the embargo because the law firm said the notarized copy sufficed to trigger protective mechanisms. The story went live at 9:03 a.m., with Monica's seal photographed beside it. Social feeds caught fire in less than an hour. Within 3 hours, our phones rang off the hook. Editors, lawyers for Vantage Loop, a harsh-sounding woman from the company's PR, someone from the SEC, left a voicemail that sounded like a courtroom. But amidst the clamor came a new message. Unknown number. "You lit the match. Good. Now run, Hazel. They don't forgive arsonists." I swallowed. My throat felt raw. Ray squeezed my hand. "We did it," she said. For a second, the triumph was dizzying. Then a chill swept in. Because when you pull the thread on a suit, you never know which seams hold the world together. And if the house was about to burn, then there was no coming back. The morning after the story went live felt like standing on a stage while someone else wrote the lines. My inbox flooded with hostile counsel and sympathetic notes. Vantage Loop's PR team crafted a denial that read like a shrug. The CFO put out a short statement about internal discrepancies and ongoing investigations. Mark's lawyer sent a cease and desist to Ray and to me, threatening defamation lawsuits. And then the SEC called. They wanted documents, they wanted signatures, they wanted to know how deep the money trail went. Monica, the lawyer, advised me to stay put. Don't speak to the company. Don't log into any work systems. The federal inquiry meant we were protected to an extent, but it also meant my life would be in boxes and subpoenas for months. We watched the company fall into a strange spin-glaze press releases, board meetings, senior staff being placed on administrative leave. Anika called me, voice small with apologies and something like guilt. I didn't know, she said. I should have known. Her words were honest. Or honest enough. I wanted them to be enough to patch everything. They weren't. The SEC investigation expanded quickly. They froze certain accounts, subpoenaed bank records, and most importantly, issued preservation orders on Vantage Loop's servers. The company couldn't legally delete anything anymore. That was our protection. It meant Mark's talent for erasure had run up against a wall of paperwork and federal teeth. Mark's world fractured. The chair of the board called an emergency meeting. The CFO was placed on administrative leave, pending a forensic audit. Mark's new shell company, Loop Shield, was flagged and then frozen. The check stub I'd found in the lobby was connected by investigators to several other shell transactions. He was arrested a week later quietly, in the parking garage of a boutique hotel. No dramatic cuffs on camera, just a plain sedan pulling up, an agent stepping out with a paper folder, and a man who had burned his bridges standing with his arms at his sides, like a man waiting for a verdict. The charges read like something out of a documentary: wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit corporate fraud. The press loved the arc. The man who'd tried to make his own world vanish had made himself impossible to ignore. But there's always more. The SEC didn't stop at arrests and frozen assets. They dove into the company's governance. The board resigned en masse. Investors paused funding. Lawsuits proliferated employees who'd been laid off, vendors who'd been stiffed, customers affected by the outage. And me? I sat at my kitchen table, cup of coffee gone cold, watching headlines scroll like a ribbon. People came to me for statements. Reporters wanted sound bites. The company's lawyers wanted me to sign an agreement, testify, but accept a settlement. My inbox filled with opportunities that tasted like poisoned candy. Promotions to lead security, offers to join other companies under NDAs that would make my past disappear. I turned them all down. I had a clause in my heart I hadn't noticed before, some small, stubborn place that wanted more than money or titles. I wanted the record to stay true. I wanted the lesson to be visible. Ray's piece won an award. Monica's law firm got a citation. Liam Quiet, steady Liam, was promoted on principle by new leadership, who wanted to prove they were different. He sent me a message with a single line. "You okay?" I wrote back. There were consequences I hadn't expected. Friends who'd kept distance during the scandal sent notes that sounded like they'd rehearsed remorse. My work reputation split open, then resealed around a new core. I was lauded in some corners and vilified in others. People love a hero until they don't. I had another cost too: sleep. For months I woke at 3 a.m., with the bright, accusing image of Mark's screenshot, the one that started everything. I had to teach myself to be human again, to not breathe like a server. The court case stretched on. Mark pled guilty to some charges, fought others. The CFO negotiated a settlement and resigned under the weight of investigations and civil suits. Vantage Loop restructured. New policies hit the inbox: mandatory segregation of duties, two-person admin approvals, immutable logs, and a real whistleblower channel. The company changed because it had to. The industry watched. Policies in small startups were rewritten. People who'd been carefree about credentials began to treat them like loaded weapons. I sat in on one of the new policy meetings months later, a room full of earnest engineers and a blank whiteboard. I listened as junior staff talked about checks and balances. I realized I wanted to teach people how to keep the paper, how to timestamp the world, how to make sure the story never disappears into ash. I declined the lead security job, but accepted an adjunct role teaching ethics and incident response at a community tech program. I started writing a small guide, Keep Records. Keep yourself translated into plain English, because I'd learned the hard way that the world hides in jargon to help people be denied the tools to defend themselves. One afternoon, as I was packing a box of donated laptops for students, a woman stopped by the desk. She was maybe 22, nervous, holding a folded paper. "Hazel Reed?" she asked. I wanted to thank you. You saved my job. You made people listen." I blinked. You worked at Vantage Loop? She nodded, eyes watering. They were going to fire me for a mistake that wasn't mine. You showed everyone that records matter, that we have rights. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. I thought about revenge a lot during those long days. I'd set out hungry for it at first. I wanted him to feel the emptiness he'd tried to create. I'd imagined dramatic scenes, ruin, a public crucifixion. What happened instead was quieter and stranger. The truth leaked like light. It didn't annihilate Mark's existence overnight. It pulled down a house of cards, built on lies and greed. People were accountable. The company changed. Lives were complicated. But not irreparably. The lesson was not the one I'd wanted at the start. Revenge feels good in the moment. It burns hot and righteous. But the blaze consumes more than the intended target. Justice procedural, messy, slow, doesn't feel like victory. It feels like repair. I didn't get everything back. Some friendships frayed beyond repair. My faith in the corporate world was broken and rebuilt in a different shape. But the logs, those cold, factual lines remained. They told the truth long after the headlines cooled. Months later, when the court finally read the sentences and Mark went to federal custody, I stood in the courtroom, not to gloat, but because someone should have been there to bear witness. He looked at me once, through steel bars and glass, eyes dull as a winter river. I felt no triumph then, only a hollow, quiet satisfaction. The world had corrected itself a little. The scales had shifted. On the drive home, I turned my phone off and listened to the engine. For the first time in a long time, I didn't check the rearview mirror for enemies. I kept teaching, kept writing, kept pushing for systems that would never let one man make a scapegoat of a career again. Maybe that's the real revenge. Not the fall of one person, but the rise of a system that makes those falls harder to engineer. When people asked later why I'd exposed the truth instead of letting it rot in my drawer, I gave the same answer every time. Because logs don't lie, I'd say. But people forget to read them. And then I'd smile. Because now, there were more people who knew how to read.